Hello, everyone. I hope that you all are doing well. At the same time, you're taking a good care of your own selves. First of all, welcome to semester 1, 2022. I know that we have already gone over the orientation classes and I've officially welcomed you. So I'm now welcoming you into our recorded and online session of classes for semester 1, 2022. As discussed earlier in our orientation classes, our classes for the semester will be divided into two modes. We will have face-to-face as well as a bit of online mode. So the online mode is what I am doing now. What I'll be doing is I will be recording your lecture notes, and from the lecture notes, you'll go and attempt your lecture quiz. So this is officially week 3 of the semester. We are starting a bit late as we are still intaking students who have just finished year 12 in year 13, and enrollment is still on for those students. So therefore, to accommodate them, we are starting a bit late, and don't worry, we'll catch up and we will be in par with the rest of the semester. So without further delays, let's go and have a look at our lecture notes for week 3. So week 3 lecture is basically lecture 1, okay, and it's chapter 1 from the book of Management Information Systems. So what we will be doing is we will be basically going over the lecture slides, and discussions on some questions based on the lecture notes will be discussed in the face-to-face class. So without further delays, let's move on with it. Now, your lecture 1 is divided into 2 sections. So section 1.1 and section 1.2. In section 1.1, we'll be looking at business-driven MIS. MIS in long form would stand for Management Information System. So within this section, we'll be looking at competing in the information age, the challenge of departmental companies and the MIS solution. And section 1.2, we'll be looking at business strategy, identifying competitive advantages, the 5 forces model, evaluating industry attractiveness, the 3 generic strategies, choosing a business focus, and value chain analysis, executing business strategies. Now, as you know, information is everywhere. Now, information is a great strategic asset. The word strategic generally would mean something in terms of long term. So when we look at strategic goals, so these would be long-term goals. Now, without information, an organization simply could not operate. So in this lecture, we'll be looking at what are some of the core business strategies that focus on using information to gain a competitive advantage. Some things that we're looking at is we'll be looking at what is data, what is information, knowledge, business intelligence, competitive advantages, SWOT analysis, Porter's 5 forces model, Porter's 3 generic strategies, and Porter's value chain analysis. Section 1.1, business-driven MIS. The learning outcomes, these are describe the information age and the differences between data, information, business intelligence, and knowledge. Second learning outcome is explain systems thinking and how management information systems enable business communications. A detailed review of all these learning outcomes will be discussed later while we proceed with the lecture notes. Next slide. Competing with the information age. Fact, the confirmation or validation of an event or object. Now, you must all be knowing what fact is. Fact, something that is on the basis of truth. Okay, now, not just on a basis of, not just saying that it is truth, but showing a confirmation or validation of an event. Information age is the present time during which infinite quantities of facts are widely available to anyone who can use a computer. So when we are generally looking at information age, we are more likely looking at things which are online, things that are operating through network of computers. Now, network of computers, another word would be internet. So internet, the long term for the word internet is internetwork. So these are network of computers. So data residing on the web, these are generally referred to as information age. Competing in the information age, examples of the power of business and technology. Amazon, not only a technology company, primary business focus is selling books. Okay, now Amazon, you must have heard of Amazon. Now Amazon was initially it initially came up an organization that came up which was just selling books over the web. Now it is selling a wide range of technological products. Netflix, not a technology company, primary business focus is renting videos. So with Netflix, the major purpose initially was to rent out videos. Now is moving on to much more like a online platform. So with the online platform, you pay a subscription fee and you are able to watch all the movies which are available on Netflix. So with the competing in the information age, you are now able to see how these companies, they move from a single product into a diversity of products. Now, Zappos, not only a technology company, primary business focus is selling shoes. Now, Zappos very much similar to Amazon. Amazon primary focus was on selling books. Zappos was just on shoes. Now, over the period of time, they basically sell almost anything over the web. Competing in the information age continued, IoT or Internet of Things, a world where interconnected internet-enabled devices or things have the ability to collect and share data without human intervention. Machine to machine, M2M, refers to devices that connect directly to other devices. Now, over 20 years ago, a few professors at MIT began describing the term Internet of Things, a world where interconnected internet-enabled devices or things have the ability to collect and share data without human intervention. So what these professors did, they came up with this terminology and started describing this technology whereby the computers will be connected to one another to the use of networked computers, and it will have the ability to collect and share data without human intervention. Now, this is what we call as Internet of Things. To date, 50 petabyte of data is available on the internet. In fact, more. Now, 50 petabyte is same as saying 50,000 terabytes. Okay. Now, or more is available on the internet and has been captured mostly by humans through methods such as typing, recording, scanning text, photos, and voice recordings. Now, data entry is a process of gathering data from business documents and entering into a computer, a vital process for any business. The issue with human data collection is that the fact that humans make mistakes. Now, what happens is this. There's close to about 50 petabyte or more data on the internet. Now, like I mentioned earlier, 50 petabyte is also same as, pardon me, 50,000 terabytes. So that much of data is already up on the web and even more. And how did this data enter the web or the internet? Basically through typing. So people have typed things on the web, on the website, through software and so over, recording, scanning text, photos, etc. Now, the reason being why Internet of Things and machine to machine is very important in the current world and in the current day of time is because when things are basically automated, there's a very little chance of errors. Now, just imagine if we ask people to continuously do things. So the moods, the feelings, and the concentration, productivity is a key factor. If the person is not in a mood, so in that particular day, the person may not be doing things correctly. Whereas a machine has no sense of feeling. It does not have mood. Okay, so what will happen is basically they'll try to feed in the precise information on the web or where it is supposed to. So that's why machine to machine and Internet of Things is a very important concept in the information age. The core drivers of the information age. So you have data, you have information, business intelligence, and knowledge. And the primary goal of this particular course, Management Information System, is to arm students with the knowledge they need to compete in the information age. Understanding data, information, business intelligence, and knowledge are the core drivers of the information age. When discussing about management information system, it is very important for all of us to understand the difference between what is data and what is information. So if I ask you, differentiate between data and information, so what would that be? So data, anything that is raw, anything that has been picked up from somewhere without it being processed. Now, information is quite opposite of data. So information is basically, it is data, but it has been processed into something else. For example, if you were building a system to track students, so your data would be height, student name, hair color, and so forth. Information might be, okay, the percentage of students who are male and female, the percentage of students who have basically passed the course. Now, hear me out. Data basically is raw facts. For example, you feed in, so when you're building a student system, so somebody enters the height, the name, the hair color, the address, the phone number, so forth into the system. So after a few period of time, when students actually start attending their classes, they do exams and so forth, then we come to know the number or the percent of students who has passed the course. So the information is processed. That is the difference between data and information. Okay, so data, raw facts that describe the characteristics of an event or object. Structured data, stored in a traditional system such as relational database or spreadsheet. Machine-generated data created by a machine without human intervention. Human-generated data, data that humans in interaction with computers generate. Now, so you have data. So data, basically, when we store data in a particular organization or about a particular organization, it needs to be structured. For it to be structured, it needs to be stored into a structured system. So the structured system, as per the slides, is a relational database or a spreadsheet. And how it is entered in two generic ways, either machine generated or human generated. Okay, so if you would have a look at the table on the next slide on data, so what would you say? Is it structured or is it unstructured? Now, unstructured data is not defined and does not follow a specified format. Now, do we follow a format in this table? Yes, we do. Look at the date, order date. So all the orders on the specific date are given in a single column. The customer, the sales rep, product, quantity, unit price, etc. All of them are in a tabular format, therefore structured. If it were unstructured, so what will happen is that data could be presented anyhow. For example, you could say customer Walmart bought 41 of Doritos for that price and so forth, but in an unorganized manner. Okay, so that would be an example of unstructured data. Now, if you quickly want to draw a comparison between structured and unstructured data, is that with a structured data, you'll be able to find information very, very quickly. With unstructured data, you will not be able to do so. For example, if I want to know what is the unit price of Doritos, single price of Doritos, so if If I'm looking at structured data, the table is in front of us. So I look at the product, where is Doritos, right on the first, second row, okay, second row for Jan, that row onwards. So the unit price is $24. Okay, so if I want to know how much quantities or what is the total amount of items bought by Target, so I look at the customer Target, okay, and if I would go down and I would see the total sales as $600. So that is the money that they've spent. So the clear definement of structured and unstructured data is that with structured data, you can quickly go and locate things on the table or where it is stored. With unstructured data, it's very difficult to do so. Big data. Big data, now you have data, now comes big data. Big data is a collection of large, complex data sets, including structured and unstructured data, which cannot be analyzed using traditional database methods and tools. Okay, snapshot a view of data at a particular point in time. Now, what happens is this. With big data, you do not only have structured, but unstructured data also. So that's where the difficulty comes in. Why the difficulty? Because since it's a combination of both structured and unstructured data, it's very difficult to analyze them. It's very difficult to assess it. It is very difficult to evaluate it and to come to a solid decision. Therefore, you cannot use any basic database methods or tools. You have to use much more comprehensive tools to go around analyzing these type of data. Okay, information, okay, data converted into a meaningful and useful context. So data, something that is raw, information, data that has been converted into something meaningful and in a useful context. Now, if you look at the previous data that we had, the table here, okay, and now if you look at this table, so this is data, and this data has been turned into information. How? Now, over here, what you can do is you can quickly go and convey out certain things from this table. For example, if I want to know who are the best customers, so the best customers will be the ones that will be generating the most amount of total profit. Okay, so if you look somewhere down, so R cross, look at name column, R cross may be the most best customer. Why? Because they end up generating close to about $1.2 million of total profits. Okay, now let's say who is my least profitable customer. So my least profitable customer, if I would go down to the table, look at the total profit, the lowest amount would be the least. Okay, so that in that case is, okay, Tostitos. Okay, so that's 13,050. Okay, so that's how you can always go and extract information from a piece of table. Okay, and look at what your data has been converted to, something meaningful and useful context. A report, document containing data organized in a table matrix or a graphical format allowing users to easily comprehend and understand information. There are two types of reports. You have static, created ones based on data that does not change. Dynamic changes automatically during creation. So report, what do you use the report for? Basically, a report is like a summarized version of a last set of data. So you have two types, static and dynamic. Static, once you have created the report, it doesn't change. Dynamic, once you've created the report and let's say your information changes, so your report would change automatically. Okay, for instance, if I would have to show or explain in terms of Microsoft Excel, you have a table, you change any data in the table, the chart also changes accordingly. Okay, in Microsoft Word, much more static. You have a table, you make a chart out of it, it doesn't change unless and until you go and change the entire thing all over. Business intelligence. Information collected from multiple sources such as suppliers, customers, competitors, partners, and industries that analyzes patterns, trends, and relationships for strategic decision making. So business intelligence is basically data or information has been collected from multiple sources. They've been analyzed And after the analysis of the data, you are able to make some strategic decision making, long-term goal. Okay, so the purpose of business intelligence is simply to make relevant and important decisions. Analytics, science of fact-based decision making. When I say analysis, analytics, evaluation, sometimes I may use the word synthesis. Okay, now all these, they come from a common term whereby you go around, you look at the data or you look at something and then you try to make some important decision on it. Okay, and there are three types of analytics. You have descriptive analytics, you have predictive analytics, and you have prescriptive analytics. Okay, now analytics is a science of fact-based decision making. Business intelligence is the scientific process of transforming data insight for better decision making process. When you look at descriptive analytics rather, it uses techniques that describe past performance and history. Let me say that again. When you look at descriptive analytics, what you're doing is generally you're using some form of techniques that feed on past performance and history. Descriptive. Predictive analytics is the use of techniques that extract information from data and use it to predict future trends and identify behavioral patterns. In other words, predictive analysis is much more future oriented. You're trying to forecast something. Prescriptive analytics uses techniques that create models indicating best decision to make or course of action to take. So descriptive is based on past performance and history. Predictive is basically for future trends or future forecasting. Prescriptive is basically you're trying to create models. You're trying to basically show some visual representations of the decisions that you're going to make. Knowledge. Knowledge is basically skills. It is experience and expertise coupled with information and intelligence that creates a person's intellectual resources. Knowledge worker, individual valued for the ability to interpret and analyze information. So when we talk about knowledge in general, the very first thing that comes to my mind when I talk about knowledge is basically some form of skills, some form of experience, and also some form of intelligence that a person has. Okay, so that's knowledge. A knowledge worker is someone in an organization who is basically valued for their ability to interpret information, analyze information, and help in decision making. Okay, knowledge worker. So a knowledge worker in an organization may be a very experienced person who has knowledge of the overall operations of a business, and he or she is quickly able to make decisions on behalf of the organization, and not just any decision, but very effective decisions. Challenge departmental companies, common departments working independently. Now we have few departments over here. Now these may be the common ones that you may already be aware of. You have accounting department, you have finance, you have human resources, marketing, operations, management, and sales. Now at the moment, when you look at these departments, there's no connection to them. That means they are working independently. So what do you think? Would they be able to operate well when they are working independently? Maybe, maybe not. Okay, so let's look at the maybe portion. Do you think they would be working well or producing well if they're working independently? Yes, they can. How? Probably less disturbance if they are not connected. No, this is not what we generally mean over here, working independently. Independently here, we are trying to look at things from a IT point of view. That means the accounting system is not connected to the finance system. The finance system is not connected to the human resources system. The human resources system is not connected to the marketing, or the sales is not connected to human resources. So what happens is that the process may be delayed in terms of making decision. The process may be halted, or the process may be falling apart. So when you have departments, when they are working independently, so what happens if one fails? They all fail. Now, the solution for this is basically the incorporation of a management information system. So when you have a management information system, so what it does, it tries to interconnect all this department to a common system. So if you look at the diagram that is in front of you over there, where it says business decisions, that is represented by a management information system. So the MIS is able to connect accounting, finance, HR, marketing, OM, and sales, all these departments together in a common platform. So now, if let's say the marketing team wants to know, okay, where or which particular product we should target on. So what they would do is they would need to just step into the reports for sales and then detect which particular product is not doing well. So another example, if HR department wants to know which salesperson should get a promotion, so that again is dependent on the sales report data. So the HR department will tap into the sales report data and then will try to make decisions accordingly. Now, the MIS solution can be applied to almost any types of goods or to any types of services. When you talk about goods, these are material items or products that customers will buy to satisfy a need or want. Example, clothing, groceries, cell phones, and cars are all examples of goods that people buy to fulfill their needs. Services, on the other hand, are tasks performed by people that customers will buy to satisfy a need or want. For example, waiting tables, teaching, cutting hair are all examples of services that people pay to fulfill their needs. Now think about some of the some goods and some services. Think about it and come up with answers. We will be talking about this in our discussion class in the face-to-face mode. Okay. Now, system thinking. So over here, we have a system thinking process. Okay. Now, basically production of something is taking place is represented by this diagram. So what is production? Production is basically a process where a business takes a raw materials and processes them or converts them into a finished product. An example is given on the screen, okay, for a hamburger process. So you have some form of input. So the input is in terms of buns, patty, lettuce, tomato, and ketchup. The process, so the patty is cooked, is washed, sorry, the lettuce is washed and chopped, tomato as well, and all the items are placed in the bun. So the output basically that you get is your hamburger. Okay, so that's the process of how your raw materials are changed into finished products. The process that you need to remember is your input, your process, and output. Systems thinking. Now, systems thinking is a way of monitoring the entire system by viewing multiple inputs being processed or transformed to produce outputs while continuously gathering feedback on each part. Successful companies operate cross-functionally, integrating the operations of all departments. Systems are the primary enabler of cross-functional operations. A system is a collection of parts that link to achieve a common purpose. A car is a good example of a system, since removing a part, such as a steering wheel or accelerator, causes the entire system to stop working. So system thinking is a way of monitoring the entire system by viewing multiple inputs being processed or transformed to produce outputs while continuously gathering feedback on each part. Look at the diagram that is represented in front of you. Feedback is information that returns to its original transmitter, the input in this case, and modifies the transmitter's action. Feedback helps the system maintain stability. For example, A car system continuously monitors the fuel level and turns on a warning light if the gas level is too low. Systems thinking provides us with an end-to-end view of how operations work together to create a product or service. Business students who understand systems thinking are valuable resources because they can implement solutions to problems that consider the entire process, not just a single component. Now, what happens if I have to explain this in a very simple way? What happens with systems thinking is with each and every process, you have some sort of feedback. For instance, with input, okay? So let's say when you are trying to feed in something into the system, it gives you some form of a feedback, okay? So after the input goes in, then it tries to process it out. So while it's processing, it gives you some form of feedback. For example, please wait while your information is processed. So after the processing takes place, it comes to the output stage that also gives you some form of feedback. So with the feedback, what happens is that the person who is actually operating on a system knows that things are going in order. If there's no feedback and something goes wrong, the person who's operating will have very little idea of what is happening. Management Information System, MIS, a business function like accounting and human resources, which moves information about people, products, and processes across the company to facilitate decision-making and problem-solving. Now, do remember that MIS is not just a technology. MIS is a business function. Most organizations have a department that is responsible for performing the MIS function. This is similar to an organization having an accounting department that is responsible for performing the accounts payable and accounts receivable functions. MIS department, some common roles and responsibilities. So we have Chief Information Officer, CIO. So oversees all users of IT and ensures the strategic alignment of IT with business goals and objectives. Chief Knowledge Officer, responsible for collecting, maintaining, and distributing the organization's knowledge. Chief Privacy Officer, responsible for ensuring the ethical and legal use of information. Generally, the Chief Information Officer typically reports to the Chief Executive Officer, which is CEO. Chief Information Officers must possess a solid and detailed understanding of every aspect of an organization, coupled with tremendous insight of the capability of the information technology. Chief Information Officer must have strong business skills and strong IT skills. Now, can you name some famous CEOs that you know of? I know of one. So since we are talking about information technology and talking about IT, so Bill Gates, he is the Chief Executive Officer for Microsoft, CEO. For Dell Computers, it's Michael Dell. For Amazon.com, it's Jeff Bezos. Okay, so these are some of the famous CEOs and very successful ones out there. Now, you will need to know the functionalities of all of these roles. So we have some more in the following slides. Chief Security Officer, CSO, responsible for ensuring the security of IT systems. Chief Technology Officer is responsible for ensuring the throughput, speed, accuracy, availability, and reliability of information technology. So with the Chief Technology Officer, you have all the other types of officers as well. You have Chief Intellectual Property Officer, Chief Automation Officer, Chief User Experience Officer. So if we look at Chief Technology Officer, okay, so they are very similar to CIOs, except CIOs take on additional responsibility for effectiveness of ensuring that IT is aligned with the organization's strategic initiatives. Now, Chief Technology officer ensures that there's efficiency in the information technology department. Chief privacy officer, okay, is basically one of the newest senior executive positions that some organizations may have. And many chief privacy officers, they are lawyers by training. Now, chief knowledge officer, which we had described in the previous slide, is one of the most recent positions added to the executive leadership team also. Now, in our class, in the face-to-face mode, we'll go and look at some organizations and some common chief information officers, chief technology officers, chief security officers, chief privacy officers, and chief knowledge officers. And let's have a short sort of a debate over it. Section 1.2, business strategy. So when we talk about business strategy, basically talking about what things or what could be some of the tactics that a business could employ to align the businesses into a much more profit-making way. All right, so business strategy, any form of tactic that allows a business to make more profit. A very good example would be for instance, before COVID-19 and hitting, let's look at Jack's of Fiji. So they were basically a brick and mortar kind of shop. So when we talk about brick and mortar, what it means is basically they had a physical shop somewhere in a town or at a business center. However, post COVID-19 or during COVID-19, they converted most of their businesses in an online mode. They started selling things over social media. So is that a good business strategy? Yes, it is. Why? Because more people are linked in to social media. More people now has access to credit cards. More people now has access to M-Pesa. And using these technologies, people can easily go and buy the items, and the items are delivered to their doorsteps. Pretty simple and pretty interesting as well. So the learning outcomes for section 1.2 business strategy are: explain why competitive advantages are temporary. Identify the 4 key areas of SWOT analysis. Describe Porter's 5 forces model and explain each of the 5 forces. Compare Porter's 3 generic strategies. Demonstrate how a company can add value by using Porter's value chain analysis. So we will basically have a look at all these in the following set of slides. First of all, business strategy. A leadership plan that achieves a specific set of goals or objectives, such as developing new products or services, entering new markets, increasing customer loyalty, attracting new customers, and increasing sales. So we will go and discuss some of the common business strategies that an organization may make, and we'll look at those in the next few set of slides. First of all, competitive advantage. Competitive advantage is basically a product or service that an organization's customers place a greater value on than similar offerings from a competitor. Now, you must have seen this, Vodafone in Digicel, very, very common. So if Vodafone comes up with a promotion triple up, so Digicel comes up with 5 up. Vodafone comes up with Bonanza and so forth, Digicel comes up with something very similar. So what happens in this case, the customer is always is at a advantaged point. How? Because they seem to make more benefits over it. Now, first mover advantage occurs when an organization can significantly impact its market share by being first to market with a competitive advantage. So a first mover advantage, a very good example would be the organization is the sole provider of that item in a specific economy. For instance, in Fiji's case, EFL. So EFL is the only provider. So any point in time, they can go off and cut off power supply. Like at any point in time, they may go and increase the cost of electricity, okay, per unit. Now, what happens is that if you look at from an overall business point of view, competitive advantages are important for an organization. Why? Because when they have competitors, they always need to ensure that they have advantage over them. It is even more important to understand that competitive advantages are typically temporary, since competitors are quick to copy competitive advantages. Okay, so remember, competitive advantages is always temporary. Why is it temporary? Because the competitors can quickly go and copy your tactics and you won't be able to do much about it. Identifying competitive advantages. So basically, there are 4 ways in which you can identify and compete with organizations who have competitive advantages over you. First of all is SWOT analysis. What it does, it evaluates project position. The 5 forces model evaluates industry attractiveness. The generic or 3 generic strategies chooses business focus. Value chain analysis executes business strategy. And we will be discussing them in the next few set of slides. First of all, SWOT analysis. So SWOT analysis, SWOT, SWOT, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. So a SWOT analysis evaluates an organization's strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats to identify significant influences that work for or against business strategies. So when you look at the strength, so basically what things the organization has more control of, what are their key points. When you look at weaknesses, what happens in weaknesses is what things the organization can improve on. Opportunities, what are some of the things that an organization can do to basically go and expand their product or service. Threats are basically those elements which somehow give competition to the organization. So when you look at strengths and weaknesses, so these 2 are internal factors. If you look at opportunities and threats, these 2 are external factors. Internal factors, that means within the organization. External factors outside the control of the organization. So strengths and opportunities, there are helpful items as per the SWOT analysis. Weaknesses and the threats are the harmful things to an organization which must be taken keen care of. 5 forces model, evaluating industry attractiveness. The 5 forces model constitute of threat of substitute of products or services, supplier power, rivalry among existing competitors, buyer power, threat of entrance. Okay, so we will be discussing these in the next 5 slides. First of all, buyer power. So buyer power is the ability of buyers to affect the price of an item. Okay, now buyer power can also be called as customer power. To reduce buyer power and create a competitive advantage, an organization will make it more attractive for customers to buy from them than from their competition. One of the best IT-based examples is loyalty programs that many organizations offer. Okay, so what happens is that loyalty programs is just like when you go and buy something from Tapus, from Prouds, South Pacific Coffee Company. If you go and buy coffee from them, what they do is you are able to accumulate points and then spend that point into some other products of that organization. Those are examples of loyalty programs. Switching costs, on the other hand, is manipulating costs that make customers reluctant to switch to other products. For example, let me give you a definite example in here. Every Saturday, there's a set of specials in supermarkets. What they do, they reduce the price of the item, or they combine 2 items and give a much more lower price. These are examples of switching costs. Second arm of Porter's 5 forces model is supplier power. The supplier's ability to influence the price they charge for suppliers. Supply chain consists of all parties involved in the procurement of a product or raw material. Now, a supplier is basically an organization in a market and will want buyer power to be low. When the buyer power is low, supplier power generally is high. In other words, when customers, they have very little control over the prices, the suppliers can always amp up or increase their prices. The supplier wants to be able to set any price it wants for its goods, and if buyers have low power, then they do not have any choice but to pay a high price since there is only one or two suppliers. For example, EFL in this case. Or let's say, let's give another example. Vodafone and Digicel, they decide that they will buy each other's share and will be labeled as one company only. What will happen? So they will take over the entire market. So once they take over the entire market, there's only one supplier. So buyers do not have much choice. So if the buyers do not have much choice, so what will happen is this company will actually go and increase the price as much they want to. Something similar to what Vodafone was doing a few years back. Threat of substitute products or services. Threat of substitute products or services high when there are many alternatives to a product or service, and low when there are few alternatives. For instance, let's say if someone is very much brand savvy, wearing Nike shoes, wearing Adidas shoes, what other brands are there? Oakley and so forth. Okay. Now, what happens is that, let's say Nike goes around and increases the price from $50 going up to $100. It's a white good. Let's say price has gone up after the budget, but somehow or the other, the price of Adidas still remains very much close to Nike's old price. So what will happen? The customers, instead of buying Nike items, they may go and end up buying Adidas. So there's always a threat of substitute product or service. Another thing, let's say you are very fond of using iPhones, very fond of it. Somehow or the other, the price of iPhones go very, very up. So then you may end up substituting to a Samsung product, okay, an Android item. So this is an example of substitute of products or services. Next up, threat of new entrants, high when it is easy for new competitors to enter a market, and low when there are significant entry barriers. So what happens is that threat of new entrants means there's always a threat that some new competitor may enter the market. However, okay, there's sometimes entry barrier stipulated by the government. For instance, apart from EFL, since EFL has majority, government has a bit of share in EFL, so Fijian government may not allow any other company to come and give competition to EFL, or even Fiji Airways in this case. Okay, so entry barrier, a feature of a product or service that customers have come to expect, and entering competitors must offer the same for survival. Okay, now this is something that was very much evident when Digicel first came in, okay, to give competition to Vodafone. So when they came in, so for their survival, it was a must that they may offer the services as good as what Vodafone was offering. If not good, better. Another example I could think of is few years back, Breadband came in and they started giving in a good amount of competition to BSP, to ANZ or Westbank. So when they entered the market, they ensured that they not only offered the same level of service, but better, lower interest rates in terms of taking loans, better interest rates in terms of for saving accounts. So now they're surviving very well. The next arm of Porter's 5 forces model is rivalry among existing competitors. It's normally high when competition is fierce in a market, and low when competitors are more complacent. Product differentiation occurs when a company develops unique differences in its products or services with the intent to influence demand. Okay, rivalry among firms, a very good example here in Fiji, let's say Tapus and Prouts. Okay, so they are always in competition with one another. So what happens is that for them to have competitive advantage, they sometimes go around offering products with a bit of differences. Probably, let's say, one would sell a Nike shoe, the other one would sell Oakley. If one would sell a perfume, let's say cool water for men's 125 ml, the other one would sell the same one, but probably a bit lower price with a bit more quantity. So slight differentiation in the products. Okay, so that's what we call it as product differentiation. Analyzing the airline industry. Let's go and perform Porter's 5 forces model or analysis of each of the following for a company entering a commercial airline industry. Now, what we'll do is slide number 37, we'll hold it off for our discussion class, and we will discuss this in class. You will be divided into groups of 2 or 3, and we'll go around discussing this. And the very last element that we have is the 3 generic strategies. The main focus is to ensure that you are sticking to the focus of the organization. Now, it is important to understand that organizations are always encouraged to follow one of the 3 strategies. So either they can choose cost leadership or differentiation or focus strategy. So when we talk about cost leadership, is whereby the organization offers the cheapest price of the item all around. Differentiation is whereby this particular organization has a very similar product to what another organization is offering, but slight bit of differences to them. A very good example would be Coke and Pepsi. Focus strategy. What happens in focus strategy is this type of organizations, they try to focus on a very narrow market. They have a few set of customers, but loyal customers, and they only try to focus on them. For instance, jewelry. Okay, jewelry. Not every individual is able to afford, or not every individual is fond of gold jewelries. But there's a very narrow market, a very few set of people who go around doing collection for these items. So this is what you call as focus strategy. Same thing with branded things, Nike, Adidas. Okay, some people are very much focused on these products. So then what happens is the organizations, they will try then their very best to focus on those customers only and work accordingly. So this is the 3 generic strategies for choosing a business focus. Now this again is also done by this researcher called Porter. Okay, so Porter's 3 strategies rather. So this finishes up with our slides for week 3. I thank you very much for your attention. Thank you very much for viewing this video. And once you have viewed this video, please make an attempt to go and answer lecture 1 quiz. Thank you. Greatly appreciate your time.